We have the pleasure of welcoming Sylvia Lafair to our interview series today. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick intro of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work with AI and automation technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest. Sylvia is the CEO and co-founder of Creative Energy Options with a great experience of over 30 years. She has her unique methods to solve a great range of challenges in the workplace. She's an award-winning author and is greatly sought after leadership coach. Her work has been referred to as solid gold and excellent by a lot of other leadership experts. We are very happy to have someone of her stature on our interview series today. Welcome, Sylvia. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here. This is truly a world initiative.
Oh, absolutely. It's so global, right? So, Sylvia, let me begin by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about your interesting work at the Creative Energy Options. And I know you've had, a very long career and so many things that you've done, so many initiatives. How has that culminated into Creative Energy Options?
Well, it's interesting. We started Creative Energy Options as a personal growth center, and CEO are the letters, and everybody would call it CEO. And I never thought I would really be working in the business world. So it's a quick, funny story. We were doing a program one night for people whose teenage children were driving them bonkers. They were so the room was filled. And at the end, a man walked up to me, and I thought he would say something about either his son or his daughter. And basically what he said to me was, "Will you come work with my senior leadership team?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "They're fighting." And I said, "So what?" So he said, "But Sylvia, you work with people who have to get along, families, and they're kind of like that. They like a family and they have to get along." So I went in, worked with them, used all the tools that I had from working with families, and things got really better. And he told a friend who told a friend, and all of a sudden, our work just transformed to be in the workplace, because the core of everything is relationships. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree.
So we started there, and then we developed programs for leaders, a program called Total Leadership Connections, TLC. We like shortening things. CEO had TLC. And we are now getting ready to put it online. So it'll be available. It used to be at a retreat center, but now it will be available to everybody worldwide in, I would say, about a month. And then we started to work very much with women leaders. And out of those two things, working with leaders, and it was from around the world. I mean, people would fly in from Europe and from India at times. But we're putting them online. And so my book, which I put over here, "Don't Bring It to Work." I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Partially.
I'll hold it. I will hold it up. "Don't Bring It to Work" has a lot of good information about what goes on in the relationship realm in the workplace. And then my book, Gutsy, is for women leaders, and it's really a good one for women these days who are really finding a next level place in the workplace and in society in general. So our work is really passionate around how to make workplace relationships really better, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or in a team, or it's talking, as we say in these days, truth to power. It's very important to be able to know how and what to do and say.
Absolutely. And that is just so wonderful, the way you're concentrating on building relationships, which is very creative. And Sylvia, I want to understand, what is your take on conflicts in the workplace? What are the steps that as leaders, how can you mitigate, how can you avoid maximum conflicts in their teams?
Well, I think there are two really important things. One is, do you know yourself? You really need to know what, my words would be, what pushes your buttons or what makes you see purple or red or whatever color you decide is your color for anger or upset. So you need to know what is that about. And I'll give you an example. I've been in meetings, and for argument's sake, John would say, tomorrow is Thursday. And you think to yourself, yeah, that's true, that's good. And then 2 minutes later, somebody else would say, tomorrow is Thursday. And you think to yourself, what do they know? Now, what's the difference? So it's inside of us. We see different people in different ways. And we have to understand what really gets us to be upset with John and not Jane or whoever. We need to understand that. The other is to help people on the other side begin to see where they get so upset, so we can help them diminish the level of upset, and then we can have a conversation that has worth. So it's very important to be able to know yourself and to then help the other people that you work with know themselves. But let me just throw this in. This is such a little thing, but it's simple. It's, if you're in a meeting, usually people have a cup of coffee or water or something near them. And when you can feel that you really are annoyed, my suggestion is take a second, take a sip and put it down, and then think this thought: what do I want as an outcome of what I'm going to say? If you do, it'll start to switch the way you talk. What do I want as an outcome? So you have to have that. It's a second. I maybe took 2 seconds because I was drinking slowly, but 1 or 2 seconds, and you think, what do I want as an outcome before you speak? And things will come out differently then. That's what we've been teaching.
That's an excellent method, and thank you for that tip. And Sylvia, what do you think are like the key areas to focus when you're undergoing transformational or personal or organizational change, especially in these trying times if you're a leader?
Well, when we talk about transformation, we're really talking about, the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. I mean, transformation means really big change. You've got to start with yourself. There's no place else to go. But you go into yourself, and here's where the book, Don't Bring It to Work, has so much merit. And that is that what we learned in our original organization, which is the family, shows up in our present organization, which is the workplace. And you say, well, how can that be? But I want you to think about this for a minute. It's set up very similarly. We have bosses that are like parents. They can tell us what to do. We have colleagues that are like siblings, co-workers that are like siblings, right?
Right.
We get salaries. And if you grew up in a place where you were given an allowance, it's the same thing. It's an exchange of energy for something. And then we even have timeouts in the workplace called performance improvement plans. So it's very similar. And why I'm saying that is because what happens is, when we get to that place, we're back to what we talked about with conflict. When the conflict starts at work, and it's going to start because we're human beings and we don't always agree on everything, right? So when it comes, we tend, when it's really upsetting, to go back to behavior we learned as kids. And how we learn to handle conflict at home is often how we handle conflict in the workplace. We either punch it through or we run away from it. And the way we were trained, so knowing that about ourselves, we can transform that. That's where it starts. And then we can begin to transform what's happening in a team because we're understanding what's going on. That's what real leadership is about. What I want to say is, if we go back, a lot of people say, oh, this isn't therapy, this isn't coaching, we're in work, we have to work. But it's relationships are the core of it. And if we don't understand it, the conflict gets worse. And then you know what happens? We have, in some companies, they have lawsuits. There's a lot of absenteeism that shows up. And there's a lot of running to HR with complaints that wastes a lot of time. So we have been teaching this for a long time now. And the companies we have worked with where we've done this have had limited problems compared to before they understood the idea of workplace is similar to family.
Mm. Absolutely. And that is such an important concept, absenteeism, and how do you avoid legal hassles, how do you really help individuals. And you stress a lot on, communication patterns that create conflicts, and they derail relationships, right? So can you expand on that concept? What are these communication patterns and why are they invisible?
Well, as kids, we learned what to do to survive and to be safe. So a lot of this is about safety. So often then we learned not to speak out because it wasn't safe. So here we are at work, and many, and especially women, become pleasers. It's very much a thing that we have been trained to please other people. And we're in the process of changing that now. But a pleaser will say yes to everything, and then they'll stuff it. And then it often comes out as physical illness, aside from, just the tiredness you have. So what we work with is, we're talking about transformation, is we transform the patterns. If I just knew about the patterns, I'd say, okay, so I'm stuck. Sylvia is a drama queen. I am, used to be. That's there are 13 patterns. That's one of them. But when you learn about this, you begin to transform them. And I have transformed my Sylvia drama queen into a good storyteller. So it's the same adrenaline that you get from pounding and making, hissy fits, but it has direction. It has purpose. And the pleaser who learned how to stuff it becomes a truth teller. And they learn how to say no. And it's interesting how many women, especially men too, but women especially, the word no chokes in their throat. It's very hard to get the word no out when you're asked to do something. Can you take on one more project? And you're thinking, I can't. But you say, sure. But in here is the no. So, and what I teach, you'll love this one, is please remember, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to defend, explain, or justify. If you have to say no, just say it. Or no, it's too much for me. You can add a short sentence, but you don't do paragraphs to explain it, because then everybody loses and you lose your place. It's like, oh, there she goes again, or he again. They're he pleasers. So, but there are in Don't Bring It to Work, I have 13 of the most common behavior patterns that we learned as kids that we bring into the workplace. I'll tell you one more, the avoider. And the avoider is somebody who, when there's conflict, I call them the gotta go guy or gal. And they can be in a meeting with anybody and look down at their watch and say, oh, I'm sorry, I have another meeting. They may or they may not, but they're out of there. And they don't want anything to do with conflict. Often they grew up in families where there was a lot of conflict that never got resolved. I mean, every family has conflict. There's conflict is there. It's the resolution of it that makes the difference. So they are then in a place where they think it's not going to work, and they're gone. You have to drag them back. Now, the transformation, since that's what we were talking about, they become what I call an initiator. And once they learn this and they begin to change it, and it's in our nervous system, it's in our brain, we've been trained over and over, they become the initiator. And what they'll say is, I know we have an issue here and we're going to sit here and work it through. And I am not going to get up from this chair till we have it resolved. While they're trying to leave, they learn how to stay and work it through, and it feels better. So that's the transformation. They're always very positive and very helpful.
And now currently in this situation, there's just so much conflict that's probably going on between a lot of organizations, and they are in conflict with business, and they're in conflict with their people, and people are remote working. It's even stressing out relationships. How would you advise the leaders of today to manage and engage their teams efficiently at this point in time?
Well, I think we do need to communicate. We do need to talk. I mean, this time is unique.
Yeah.
Nobody has experienced this before. I mean, we've had difficulties and we've had, wars, we've had, crises, but this is so long. And when I look out, on the news, because I don't know about you, but we're still home based here in California. And you see streets in Manhattan, you see streets, I'm sure, in Delhi or Mumbai, empty, that are usually so crowded. You go, is this really happening? So we need to, so now we're talking about, again, it's not conflict so much as stress. People are feeling so much stress. And I have a private women leaders inner circle Facebook group. And one of the questions I asked there is, would you like to be discussing more around stress or more around work issues? And everybody who responds is stress, 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 stress. 2 people said work issues out of about 100. It's all stress. So if you're a leader, you need to really understand that when people are under that kind of stress, the first thing people can do is begin to talk about it. It kind of relieves when you can say the truth. I'm feeling really stressed. I'm upset. I'm concerned. I'm afraid, whatever words would work there, and be able to sit in a group and listen to each other. I really suggest now, Zoom seems to be the norm right now for how we're communicating around the world. But, you look up there and you can see whoever is in the group, and what happens is you can get the reactions. And the first thing to do when we do groups, we start our programs with something called Getting Current. And we've taught this to all the companies we've worked with. Getting current doesn't have to take a long time. People would resent it at first, but it means just, where are you right now? What's happening with you? So once you go around a room and people can say, you're on Zoom, my kids are driving me nuts, or I don't have enough time for this, or I'm worried about my parents, or, my husband doesn't feel well and I'm afraid he may get sick. Whatever it is, you don't have people go into detail, but they just, in saying where they are, it usually takes, in this day and age, it probably take a little longer, but it usually takes, when we're not in unusual times, 10 minutes max in a group of 20 to be able to say that. And then you can get into the work that needs to be done. But people have to be able to have a route to express themselves emotionally before they can really listen intellectually. If somebody in the group, after they've said something, is really in a difficult place, I would say, let's take that offline and we can talk about it later, or make a note to call them later. But that's the real responsibility of a leader in this day, right now.
Right. It's just empathizing with their, teammates. And a lot of, people that I talk to, they talk a lot about empathy now, which is, I think, the new norm for leaders, just to empathize and understand the feelings of their fellow employees, and to try and help them out, just make them feel better. So, yeah.
And also share their own, because if you're there sort of like a cardboard person and you don't have any problems, who's going to tell you the truth? And again, the other thing that we teach is, which is interesting, is telling the truth is not spilling your guts. It's a very, very disciplined art form. So if you're the leader, you can say, I'm having some concerns with whatever, fill in the blank. And then you add, and I'm in the process of handling it. So as a leader, there is a sense that you're not falling apart and they're all going to have to take care of you too. And if you're a leader, you should have a coach or a friend or a partner or a spouse, whatever, that you can talk about some of your own difficulties and upsets with and distress. We need to get it out. So that's really, I think empathy it's a two-way street. It's we as leaders out there and those who are working with leaders, understanding the pressure leaders are under too. That's the grown-up way.
Absolutely, that's the mature way. And you're right, showing a sense of exposing yourself just a little, showing your vulnerabilities to your fellow employees just to make them feel relatable, that would be really important.
Good. What else?
And I just kind of projecting out into the future, right? There is an increase in the millennial and the Gen Z workforce. There are gig workers, all kinds of contract workers and consultants and all of those. We see a rise in that, right? So do you think that organizations should adapt to this change now, and will this continue in the future?
Well, it's interesting. It must be at least 10 years ago that the gig economy, we were told through research that the gig economy was going to be more the norm than the exception. And the way I kind of put my mind around it was making movies. You gather a group of people together, you get the technicians, you get the actors, you get the artists, you get the clothes designers, and they all come together and they have this incredible project that they work on. And then when it's over, it's over. And then they go on, but they get known in their fields. And then there's another movie that comes along and the same thing happens. And I think that, you can stay with the same company if you like, but it's a different mindset. It's much freer. And I think that I don't think we're going to go back to the old way. I'll tell you a very funny story. I was in a large corporation. I was sitting next to the CEO. We were at the back of the room. There must have been 300 people at this meeting. And somebody on stage was getting an award, and he was saying how proud he was to have been at the company for over 30 years. And in the row right in front of us were two millennials, and one turned to the other and said, "Why would he do that?" So I poked the CEO of this company, and he just shrugged his shoulders. He said, "The world is changing." So it is interesting, but we are headed to a much more flexible economy and way that we're working. And I don't know what's going to happen after this time, but their changes will be deep and definite. That's what I see.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out, I love the analogy again of, movies and gig economy. It's just so relatable. So thank you so much for that one. And I agree with you. The gig economy is here to stay, and we just have to find ways to work with them and make an inclusive workplace to just make a better movie, a successful movie, a blockbuster.
That's good.
So, I just, I've had a beautiful conversation with you, Sylvia, and I just want to wrap it up by asking you if you have any other important sound bites that you'd like to leave our viewers with.
Well, I think it is that we need to really understand that on the other side, whoever the person is, they have a history, and they may be cool or calm or nasty or whatever, but we do need to have some, your word was empathy, another word is compassion. And my biggest thing with the workplace is we need to ask better questions to get the answers rather than tell. We're past the time of telling, we're in the time of asking. And in that dialogue will come the new way. So I do a lot of work around communication and finding the right words. And the other thing is timing. And that's something we learn over time, how to work with. So thank you for doing such a great job and for being there in India to make the whole world a better place. And I so appreciate your having invited me on today.
Oh, it's really a pleasure, Sylvia. I mean, I've learned so much from this conversation, and I just love it how it's just a free-flowing dialogue, and there's no stress about it, and we can do this where there is so much external stress, and make something beautiful out of this. That's just phenomenal. So thank you so much. Like I've had a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
Well,
Thank you so much.
stay safe and have a healthy time ahead of you. Take care of yourself, and I will stay in touch with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.